swagger, okay? Regardless of what happens out there. Doesn't matter. Keep your swagger.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Five Hole Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We are your hosts today, TJ and Maddie. What's going on, bud?
Welcome back, my man. I'm excited. Right. Honestly, we got an early start today.
Yeah, we got an early. I have to be up at like 4-ish tomorrow, heavy on the ish, 4 a.m. So yeah, we cannot be going at 11. So I'm glad this worked out for both of us. So we're midway through Saturday. It's 7 o'clock right now for anybody that's trying to put together why we don't know the stats of the 7 p.m. games or the 10 p.m. games. It's because they haven't happened yet. So we're working with what we got. A couple of games that already happened. The New York Rangers just kind of shat the bed. But we got your week preview coming out today. We're going to be talking all the best teams and streams to target for going into the next week. We're going to be talking some guys who did really well last week. And, just the news and notes from around the league. Let's crash into it, man. So let's talk about some standout performances. I like the first one you got here. I definitely want to dig into this one a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, coming into this week, I would say you scream it into this week. Matty Tkachuk in Florida, 15 points in his previous 6 games coming into this week. So quite literally the hottest player in the NHL. And then some Matty Tkachuk variants. He now has 0 points in the 2 games that he played coming into tonight. We'll see if he does anything coming into this evening for Saturday, and then we'll talk about Florida's schedule going into next week. But they've got a great looking schedule. But yeah, he was probably a week winner for you in week 8, and so far hasn't really done too much for you in week 9. But another guy who's just ripped right into week 9 is Jake Guentzel, man. Like 5-game goal streak, not point streak, goal streak. I think he's got 7 through those 5. He had a Hattie versus Calgary last game. Nice thing to see with him is, like, we always know the upside with him and potential on that power play with Tampa, but what he wasn't really doing was firing the puck a lot. And over the last 5 or 6 games, he's up above that 4 shots per game threshold for like a player of his caliber. Like I need to see more than 2 a game. Like I want to see 4s and 5s and 6s, especially when they're being teed up by Nikita Kucherov. So amazing trend and definitely a noteworthy performance. I'm gonna tee this up and I'm gonna throw this to you for Pittsburgh, because there's 3 guys here on Pittsburgh that we could really talk about. The whole damn team became relevant last week, but yeah, none of them were Crosby.
Yeah, super weird sort of. And I mean, what was it? 9 goals they put up or something. And Malcolm had Montreal part of it. And they are, I think I have something here about, Pittsburgh. They are the 2nd highest scoring team in December, largely due to that 9-goal game. So
we all called
making
that,
it happen.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I was tossing around whether or not I was going to pick up Jari. I was talking to the guys in the chat in the Bang Daddy channel in the Discord, and I'm like, should I do Jari? Like, am I fucking out to lunch right now? And they're like, yeah, you're stupid, don't do it. And then, like, hindsight always makes everybody kind of see clear, but man,
there was a lot of dancing on Pittsburgh's grave for sure. And like, not to say that they've turned this massive corner, but they sure as hell were relevant for fantasy purposes. I mean, specifically like Rust and Raquel, Letang's probably still owned partially because of what he used to do and just because of D scarcity, but Rust and Raquel specifically, like, this was a 3-game week for Pittsburgh, no off nights. So like all heavy, and both those guys were under 35% owned. So I'm going to say, like, depending on the depth of your league, like, good for you if you held one of those players and actually got some of that production, because it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing if you actually got it on your roster. So I'd say the only thing there that was a little bit unfortunate was, they scored 16 goals in those 3 games most recently, and Crosby has 4 assists. So, I mean, he's still doing his Sid thing, right? I mean, he's 80-point pace, but there's not really any splash to it.
I mean, Matt Grzelcyk is in one of my fantasy leagues here. Michael Bunting, Matt Grzelcyk, Carter Kell, Chris Letang, Brian Rust, all outscoring Sidney Crosby. And get this, Blake Lizotte right on Crosby's heels in terms of fantasy points. It's
the balanced scoring they want.
Yeah, it's such a weird December, but there's no worries. I think when it comes to Sidney Crosby, he always gets his.
Yeah, man. Seattle too. A couple of players we're going to talk about here. Vince Dunn came back and immediately started helping you. He's been back for 7 games. He's got 7 points. He's playing a ton of 22 minutes a night. Periffs are there. Shots are there. He's got, I think it's 3 goals, 4 assists, or 4 goals and 3 assists. So he's helping you everywhere. That matters. Oliver Bjorkstrand too. So, I mean, this is a bit of a longer streak that's going on here, but 14 points over his last 11 games. So we're spanning about 3 weeks now where he's been pretty helpful to you. He's got 2 2-goal games in his last 3. Very unsustainable shooting percentage. Who the hell cares? You're not holding him for a very long period of time. So keep riding it while it's there, man. Like Seattle as a whole here, you got another guy that's just producing where we didn't really think there might have been some production.
Yeah, I've got 2 because Grubauer, man, he started 4 of the last 6 games for Seattle. I mean, namely, Shane Wright was the guy you were thinking of. I mean, he's point per game over the last 6 games, and it's getting people really amped up like, oh, this is the Shane Wright we've been waiting for. Of course, you got to salt this one a little bit because it's a very small sample size, and we've seen big sample sizes of Shane Wright. And this just feels like a really weird kind of sample. I hate to keep using that word, but it's just like all jam-packed into one, like all this scoring for Pittsburgh, for Seattle. Tampa is first in the league, and that kind of checks out. But like Pittsburgh, Seattle, I don't know for December. And the Flyers are 4th in the league in scoring in December. So I love Shane Wright, what he's doing right now. I don't know if he's going to be a long-term hold. Grubauer, I mean, at least for the time being, he's got 4 of the last 6 games, and he's playing a back-to-back, or 2 games back-to-back rather. And Dan Bilesma was quoted as saying the last 5 have been the team's best stretch of goaltending this season, of which Grubauer played 3 of those 5. So he got the 6th start, got his 4th start in 6 games today. And I don't know, like if Bilesma is super amped up on Grubauer, I could see the net shift kind of go towards Grub for a little bit, but I think in the long run, that's going to be Decord's net.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think back, it was 2 weeks ago on this very show, we were talking about Anaheim and how low owned that roster is. They're a team where they could start to produce under sort of neath the radar, and nobody's going to know because nobody owns their players. And we said to everybody on here, Seattle's the exact same type of team. They're going to get going, and we're going to be looking in the rearview mirror saying, holy cow, they got going, because nobody owns anyone on their team. And that's exactly what's happened.
When we talk about Anaheim, because their schedule is pretty good coming up later this week, I have like 15 players listed because there's 1 or 2 that are above 50%. So, you know, we'll speed around them. We're not going to spend too much time on Anaheim. I did want to talk about Linus Ullmark. Last 6 games, 185 shots on 185 saves on 194 shots, over a 950 save percentage, really turning his season around. But it's coming in spades. So you get bad weeks, you get good weeks. That's just how goalies are, no matter who you're rostering. But Ottawa's, you know, that's a team that's pretty streaky.
Good couple of weeks in a row there for him. I do own him in our listener league, so quite happy with especially their start. I mean, they were the only game in town yesterday. Everybody had their eyes in Carolina. That's a tough place to go in and win.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? Piggybacking on that, right? A couple of sends that we can really talk about aside from the usual guys. And underneath this might be a bit of a story of how Ottawa might find its way back to, you know, maybe being a bit good. And that is, look who's doing it. So Drake Batherson had himself a night, right? Yeah. Against Anaheim earlier this week, 3 goals, an assist, 3 power play points, 5 shots, 2 hits. He had basically a week and a day, and he hadn't scored in about 2.5 or 3 weeks. Fast forward to the very next game, Shane Pinto, have yourself a game, right? We say this streamer tip of the cap here, 2 goals on Friday against Carolina. He went 19 without scoring. When you talk about how a team starts to turn it around, this is how. Brady's going to have his nights. Stützle's going to have his nights. Giroux's going to contribute. But like Batherson needs to have a night where he's the guy and they win. And a random Pinto game every now and then. Like, can't be the same guys all the time. And I thought that was just a really good sign for Ottawa that, you know, they're getting production from guys a little bit further down the roster that are actually contributing to winning games.
You want to talk about Adam Gaudette, man. He's second on the team in goals, and he's just like kind of I mean, I don't want to talk down to him, but he's kind of a nobody. Like, he's not part of the clique of players that you think of when you think of like top Ottawa players.
That's
Nothing
right.
against Gaudette, but man, he's really packing them in. I want to personally apologize to Ian Gooding, who I am smacking with half of these players that we talked about as these standoff performances in the fantasy puck league. I have Vince Dunn, I have Matty Tkachuk, I have Linus Ullmark, and Batherson.
No.
So Ian, I apologize, but I can't say I'm not enjoying it. I'm up. God, I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to talk shit. I just want to just say that. So Ian, thinking about you, bud. Let's get into some storylines, the injuries. Let's kick off with the injuries. There's a couple here that we could kind of dig into, but most of it we're just going to read through. So Will Smith back for San Jose. Hedman is trending in the right direction, and he was game time decision. I wrote this a few hours ago. I don't know if he played. Roman Josi is still out. Did take part in full skate today, but remains out. Tyler Toffoli's sick. There's a lot of sickness going around the West Coast. Kevin Lankinen is sick. I think there's a couple guys in Seattle who are sick as well. Just this big flu bug going around. But Zuccarello, Jonas Brodin back for Minnesota. Boldy is back on line 2 as Zuccarello takes his spot on the Kaprizov.
Yeah, that's big.
Line back. That's a tough one.
I
expected a big game out of him against Philly.
Boldy, yeah, and not really much. Yeah, I watched a chunk of that game, and like you notice him out there, but I mean not in the same way than when he was, but taking even strength with Kaprizov, that's going to catch up. I mean, Zuccarello and his robot nut might be up there for a while.
Oh God, Ovi. It's to be determined if he's going to travel with the team to Dallas and Chicago. He did join Washington for practice. He's in a no contact right now. Trevor Moore, upper body injury. Yeah, is what it is. Bobby McMahon is back for Toronto. He's kind of this sneaky under the radar. I like him for like spot starts and just one game streams and things like that. He missed 7 games. He's playing with Minton and Domi right now. Stolars, we don't know a ton about what's going on in terms of like timeline or anything, but we do know that he's not playing today and he will not play Sunday, tomorrow. So they did call up Hildeby. Zellweger's back for Anaheim. He was scratched last game. There's been like this rotating door of people getting scratched, like Jackson Lacombe and then Zellweger. But I think with Fowler, who got traded, who's going to be in our headlines bit, I wonder if him leaving kind of like solidifies the decor. Obviously, they brought in Trouba, so it's not like they have less or more players or anything. They've kind of just tread water at this point. But that left defense in Anaheim, it's brutal. Like the right defense is like Trouba, Gudis, and then the left is like Minchukov, Zellweger. And like it's just not impressive at all. So I wonder if like Zellweger can't get a decent stretch of games together. Then we got Dahlin, who's getting close to returning. Bunch of stuff going on the island. Barzal was a game time decision for today. Not sure if he played. I don't know if that's something you could check for me there, Maddie. Duclair is traveling but won't play. Horvat day to day. He's going to travel, might play. Varley is not going to travel. Evan Bouchard did play tonight. He was a game time decision, so he's in. Ehlers is skating. He's in a non-contact. And in Detroit, some stuff going on with the goalies. So Cam Talbot re-aggravated something during practice, and they called up Jack Campbell, which is wild. He's back. Vladar, day-to-day in Calgary. Wolf is going to see some short-term value in terms of volume. And Jake Middleton for Minnesota, long-term IR. That one stings. He was kind of a sneaky good guy, yeah.
He was, like, especially in like banger leagues, cat leagues, like he was kind of sneaky up there, top 80, so top 90 type of player, and now he's just not there.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the peripherals, that was his thing, but he was putting some offense on top of it too.
I mean, if you do up one of those leagues, plus minus, I think he was near the top of the league, if not at the top of the league for plus minus too for Middleton. No, he is not playing. I got Barzal as still game time decision, but they don't play till tomorrow. So,
all right, there you go.
See what that looks like. But yeah, I mean,
Hedman, that game's not till 10, so he's still game time decision.
Of course, I mean, that's going to be 9:47 or something. We'll find out.
Evan Bouchard was like 1 minute before game time today, which is like
it's so tough, man. Especially, I mean, middle of the day is one thing, but when it's the evening games or the Pacific Coast games, you're left with very little.
you're fucked. Yeah, I mean, my decor. I had Yossi. He was a game time decision today, and my decor. By the time Yossi plays at 9:00 tonight, like my entire decor, I can't switch anybody out. What are you gonna do? I don't know. That's just me venting. Sorry, I was telling Maddie I got this coffee cup. It's the only cup in the room. That's what I got my.
That's the classiest whiskey cup. Absolutely.
All right, let's get into the headlines. I mean, Cam Fowler got traded to St. Louis. There's a lot of buzz about it just because it is a trade. And, oh, my God, is he going to get power play 1? And I did a little bit of thinking. I want to get your pulse first. Do we care if he gets power play 1?
I mean, in a vacuum, I do, because I think there's a little bit more upside to St. Louis with the coaching change and with Montgomery. I really feel the team did level up there. And so they're going to be scraping to get in as a bubble team in the West for sure, because that playoff picture is to me, it looks fairly set. I know, what is it, December 14th, but it looks pretty set to me, save for maybe one team, and maybe that one team, St. Louis. So that being said, I mean, taking a look at the stats that you have on there, I mean, it rings true. This hasn't really been a hotbed of power play production for any defenseman.
Yeah, that's kind of what drew me back, is that St. Louis, their top power play guy, has just not really been like, I liked it when it was Falk because he had that floor of periphery, which you could always lean on it. Like, he'll never give you a 0 game, but Cam Fowler isn't a banger in the same way. And over the last 10 years, we've only seen 3 St. Louis defensemen who have scored more than 20 power play points, and that's Shattenkirk in 15 and 16, which is almost 10 years ago. And then, I mean, he did it again the next year with 20 power play points. And then Petro did it in 1920 at 15 to 20 power play points. You got Krug in 21-22, then 16-17 Pietrangelo, 18-19 Pietrangelo with 19, and then 15. And outside of those 6 defensemen in the last 10 years, no St. Louis defenseman has more than 15 power play points. So it's just not an environment that's conducive for a power play quarterback to be like. If it's Falk, you do have that floor. If it's Fowler, you don't. So it's kind of like ride or die by power play points, and it's just not there. Like, they don't exist that much. So I wonder if
with Montgomery though. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I think about how Boston used their power play quarterbacks, and McAvoy seemed to be pretty married to that position when he was healthy. And so maybe it just means whoever does have that spot has a little bit longer leash than they might have had under Bannister. I'm not sure, but it's one of those things where we're going to keep reiterating this point over and over again. I don't need to be the first train out of the station on the Cam Fowler fucking express. Yeah. So if he happens to be the guy and starts doing it, he's one of the players that has to show me they got to do it before they're going to make it on. He's got to play his way onto my roster versus a player working his way off.
Yep. Firmly on my watch list, nowhere near my roster at this point. Boston claiming Oliver Wahlstrom. So Wally he is a bit of an analytics darling. There have been stretches where his shots on goal or his, scoring chances or whatever it is, there's always something that somebody's like, oh my God, if he only got more time on ice, he'd be doing great. And I can't help but if you guys remember Andre Kasha, he was the same thing in Anaheim. And then he got traded to, I think he went to Carolina, and then he might have went to Pittsburgh. I don't know if I'm misremembering, but there were times where he saw better time on ice in Anaheim even, and it just never translated. And it's almost like a catfish. And I do get that vibe with Wahlstrom. I don't know if there's going to be top 6 potential. I want to get your pulse on that one too, Maddie. But I mean, Brazeau right now, he's 3rd on the team in points, and he's
kind of doing it. Yeah. I mean, so Boston as a whole, I think, has deflated, as a balloon in terms of team offense, and maybe somebody like him can help kickstart that a little bit. Again, we want to see it first before we're going to make any sort of rash decisions there. But I mean, there is potential for him to make an impact. I would look at this more of, I want to phrase this the right way. This is probably going to be a scenario where the rich get richer. Because if you're a team that's like scraping, we're at the 10-week mark here. So like, if you're scraping for relevance, you're in the bottom half or you're around the Mendoza line there, like, do you really have the ability to add a Wahlstrom and kind of hope he turns into something over the next few weeks? Like, maybe not, but like a top 4 team, maybe they do. And so maybe if we're talking to that GM, like, it's worth a swing.
How many weeks removed are we from when they signed Tyler Johnson too? So like they're adding pieces. They're right now it's Adam Sandler throwing pickles at the fucking window, trying to see which one wins the race, and that's all that's happening. So
that's the best analogy I think that's ever been expressed on this show.
They're just throwing pickles at the window. It's like throwing darts, right? Brazeau is the second right wing, and if he's he's not displacing Pasternak. That's straight up not going to happen. Wahlstrom played 32 games for the Islanders last year. Every single one of them was that right wing. I don't know if there's top power play potential. Maybe they could switch out Lindholm. Like, I'd love to see that happen. Lindholm has sucked ass, to put it lightly. And he had 2 goals in his first 3 games with Boston. 1 goal in the 28 games since, or 28. That can't be right. 28 games. Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Man. And no goals in his last 10, and he's got no points in his last 7. So Lindholm on that top power play is probably low man on the totem pole. You still got Zacha there, but he at least is doing better than Lindholm, which isn't a very high bar to kind of step over. But I don't know. This one is more of a guilty until proven innocent kind of guy, because Wahlstrom has burned me in the past, and the advanced stats aren't even that good this year. So the things that he was good at, he's just not doing it. But that could be nature and nurture. I feel like the Islanders haven't really given him an opportunity. So we'll see. Again, another guy that's on my watch list. I don't think I'm really jumping to get the shiny new toy right now. Either of them, Fowler or Wahlstrom. All right. You want to talk a little bit about Rangers taking a shit nap today?
Man, that was tough. I mean, again, if you were watching hockey this afternoon, it was kind of the only thing on early in the day. And I believe there was a narrative around how that game might go going into it, just given the 2 teams playing each other. But the Rangers, from the drop of the puck, were just chasing that entire game. The intensity wasn't there. They looked slow. I mean, and then it went downhill in a hurry. I believe it was 2-0 going into this, and then really fell apart.
First 5 minutes of the second period, they put up another 3.
That's right. And so, I mean, what do you do at that point? Now you're playing for pride. If you've got any of the highly owned players on the Rangers, you look at starting off your day strong from a fantasy perspective. You probably could have played anybody in those slots at 1 p.m. with what the lineups looked like throughout the end of the day. And so to get a couple of, if you're streaming somebody like a Zibanejad or you got Panarin on your team, really, there wasn't a lot there. And so it's a tough way to start your Saturday. In terms of the Rangers, you and I were chatting a little bit before we got started here, but I firmly believe the New York Rangers have a Chris Drury problem. And until they get that sorted out at the GM position, it's what they're doing and how they're choosing to go about it. And I feel there's reverberations through that locker room. And I think you're seeing it with this sort of disengagement from some of the important players on this team. And I don't know if you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing.
No, it's exactly that. Like Panarin, even if he does take his foot off the gas pedal a little bit, he's still going to be a 100-point player. So you're not going to really notice it in his box stats or anything. But look at how people are reacting with Zibanejad as a fantasy producer right now, and just the amount of line juggling that's going on, and just inconsistency. I mean, we talked about it in one of our most previous episodes. Like, you have to go all the way back to game number 5 for the Rangers for them to have a 500 win percentage, and they have just been terrible. And I'm afraid, I think Laviolette's a good coach and still has a voice over that room, and it often is the case where the coach is the first to go. Like, you don't just drop the GM.
That's kind of been the move, right?
Yeah, they just traded their captain. And I get it, like $8 million, that's a hefty price tag for a guy that's really not producing at a certain level. And then there's that Ottawa bullshit. And, something I thought was really funny, we were talking before, is I wish Andalauer or anybody in the Ottawa organization would have taken a shot at Drury. Just be like, no, we're not trading Brady. Right. Like, why would I trade my captain? That would be such a shitty move. And then just take these underhanded kind of slaps at him. But
yeah, he kind of popped off about tampering and things like that. But I feel that that's a rot organizationally that they have to deal with right now, and it's manifesting itself in what appears to be players just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah.
And Lavi's a really good coach, and he's got a very specific style. Usually motivation is not a concern. This team was in the Eastern Conference final last year.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's hard not to look at very public a handful of moves by that general manager that there's a 7-letter word called culture that gets thrown around a lot in sports, and it's fantastic to use because nobody can really quantify what it is or what it means, but somehow it matters when it's there, and when it's not there, you can feel it. And this feels like a culture, a chasm in the culture of that team. And until they figure that out, I mean, everybody could think, holy cow, if they did that to the captain, what about me? If they ship this guy out after signing him to a no move and then makes him very publicly say either waive it or we're going to put you on waivers and ship you out anyways. I mean, what does that do for anybody in that organization in terms of confidence? What kind of I don't know. Anyways, all I think is it's not great for their culture, and they're too good of a team to be playing this terribly. There has to be another factor.
You can't go from the conference final to like fucking just barely above 500 and there not be fingers worth pointing. And I don't think it's at the players. Like, you obviously have one of the best goaltenders in the entire league, one of the best coaches currently out there, I would say, and some of the best players on the face of the earth as well. Like, I don't know, there's no reason. Like, you can look at the stats and just be like, oh yeah, shooting percentage this, and expected goals, whatever. Like, when you get into the psychology, there's no natural stat trick for psychology and how these guys are feeling. So I do think it's something bigger than just like, oh, Zibanejad just hasn't been getting the right looks or anything. No, there's got to be something deeper to it. Like, this is such a weird team to see them flopping like night after night after night. It's so weird. Colorado, to move on here, Colorado shook up their power plays, which is kind of cool. Ross Colton owners are going to rejoice. Casey Middlestat owners are going to rejoice. They are back on the top power play, which is great. Colton's a great net front guy, and you got Nishushkin down on power play too. He'll be the net front guy there. I don't know if this is going to be like long-term or anything, but I remember saying that something like this would happen, and this is kind of how I shake out these units in my head. Maybe I would have Nishushkin up there instead of Casey Middlestat, but other than that, like, Colton as a power play one guy, cheap power play one guy, like, that's a great move. And Colorado, great schedule going into next week. So Middlestat, Colton, get them on your radar. Stamkos, 1C between Forsberg and Marchessault. Another team who's just like playing way under their pay grade, their weight class. Dude, I don't know if it's too many cooks in the kitchen with trigger fingers or what it is, but like, Nashville needs to be studied. Like, they will be in the history books. And
feels like they got a bunch of those chefs right in the kitchen, like making all the food, and there's nobody out there actually dishing. There's nobody out there serving.
There's nobody in the restaurant.
Right? Yeah, it's just piling up, man. Like,
oh my God. Yeah. You got Ryan O'Reilly with Nyquist and LaRue right now. So Forsberg, Marchessault, and Stamkos, that's your line one. Could be different next week, but I thought it was kind of neat when I was looking through. Mackenzie Blackwood gets his first start in Colorado. So everybody that picked him up, here we go. Tonight's the night. You're going to see how that goes.
Tonight. Ironically, against Nashville, who people thought maybe Wedgwood would get the start, but they came out fairly early today and said Blackwood was going. I mean, Wedgwood didn't exactly play great in their last game. I think they lost 4-1. But nice to see. I want to see what Blackwood does here. Great unknown. We've been talking about who's going to be the big move to Colorado, and a lot of Blackwood speculation. It's finally happened. I do own him actually in my home league. So I'm kind of excited to see what we have here.
Let's get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, at least Colorado allows a decent amount of shots. I mean, I think the worst case scenario would be for him to go somewhere like Carolina, where, you're going to get a sample size of like 14 every night. So I'm very, very optimistic. I just want more than anything for Colorado to just stabilize net a little bit. I think they're flirting a little bit too much with the playoff line in the Western Conference for my liking, just because I want to see a couple players on that team, really go deep. And so I think this is going to help stabilize things, hopefully, down the stretch for them.
Yeah, man. It almost feels like Colorado and Colorado, they're healthy now, right? I mean, except for
finally,
who is an asterisk for the season in its entirety. So we'll see. But like, this almost feels like day one for Colorado. Like they're getting Blackwood, like they redid their entire crease. They traded Justus Annunen, they traded Georgiev. They have a new tandem. And everybody's healthy. So, just treat it like day one and go forward. And I feel like they could do it. In Chicago, man, something really interesting, especially for folks in dynasty leagues who've been waiting on Frankie Nazar. Some top power play time for this guy and some top six time too. So it's just going to be a look for now. But, if he's able to make things happen, it could potentially be a longer look. I want to look up what he did tonight, if anything.
Yeah, because Vlasic, I think Alex Vlasic was up there for the last maybe 4 or 5 games and actually producing somewhat decently, about an assist per game, I think averaged out over the past 4 or 5 games. Some periffs involved there too, but I don't believe the offensive upside that a Nazar would have, right?
Oh, man. So his stat line, not great, but almost 4 minutes of power play time. So for us in fantasy, there's some intrigue there, but he went 1 for 7 in the faceoff dot, and he's a top 6 center. So the likelihood that continues just went down. 2 PIMs, a shot on goal, and he had 14 minutes, but with 2 penalty minutes, that time could have been more if he wasn't in the box. So is what it is. Keep on watching. Like I'd love to see him do some stuff. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, man. Let's talk about the week ahead. For me, the tip of the week that I have is just, this is a good week. We've had a pretty hefty handful of like shit weeks going all the way back to like, I can't even remember. It feels like the last 4 weeks have just been terrible for streaming, but this one is super nice, super smoothed out. The heavy nights are not too heavy. The light nights are not too light. I think Monday's our lightest night at 3 games, and the heaviest night has 11. So this is even the heavy nights. So when we talk about off nights for the rest of the episode, you can kind of like, I don't want to say ignore it, but just give it less credence than you would normally, because there is still a chance that you could have an open spot on your heavy nights. So yes, Florida has 4 games, 4 off nights, and that's who you're going to want to go for. But picking up like Nico Mikkola or somebody who has less quote unquote off nights, of a higher caliber, somebody like Ross Colton, somebody like a Casey Middlestat, like you're not getting points just for off nights. You can still get a 0 on an off night. So just kind of try to balance that, especially in a week like this where there's just so much to choose from in terms of 4-game teams and options out there. So Florida is kind of thin pickings unless you're in a shallow league. So you definitely want to get 2 games max out of each stream if you're in a league that has 4 acquisitions a week. But you can really cherry pick your streams this week. Like you could really like pick and choose and kind of curate your own week.
Yeah, we don't normally get that type of dispersion in terms of options available to us. Usually it's a handful of teams kind of filtered down to, you're going to need to own one of these 5 or 6 guys and then just kind of roll those dice. And when we get a week where there might be 10 teams that are streamer viable, all of a sudden that becomes a lot more fun because there's so many more outcomes that work. I really enjoy this tips part of the week. I know we're going to get into the schedule shortly here and some streamers to target, but I like this. We get to have a little bit more of a chat about something that's fantasy relevant. We hear all the time about buying players, getting value when you're making trades, trying to pick people up where you feel you're getting value. There's another side to that coin that's less talked about, which is, what if you want to buy or acquire a player and they're producing at their all-time high? And this is more, yeah, that's right. This is more for redraft. I would say the strategy here would be more for redraft because there's a lot of other considerations in every dynasty league that's kind of bespoke to that league. That wouldn't really make much sense for this. So let's look at this with the purposes of being a redraft conversation. So there need to be a few criteria for sort of a season-defining move such as this, right? You'd first and foremost want to have some league-winning upside with the player you're trying to capture. But there needs to be a catch. There needs to be a known flaw with this player. There needs to be like a built-in bias with this player. There's something that needs to be there to be exploited. Nobody trades perfect top 10 players. I mean, unless you want to overpay in bold capitals, size 72 font. Nobody's giving you Nikita Kucherov, okay? But so prepare to overpay. But try to do it with, say, a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, a 3-for-2. You can still do the overpaying, but you're getting something tangible back not only in the better player, but the position flexibility and the roster flexibility, which is worth something. It's not worth a whole player, but it's not worth zero either. It's somewhere in the middle. So you get to pick your decimal point there, depending on how important that is to you. So we're going to go over a couple of candidates that I've identified here. These are players, just might be some of my own personal bias, but these are players that I feel are producing at near all-time or all-time highs and are players that I would try to go acquire. And the first player on my list, my top candidate for this actually, is Braden Point. I fucking love Braden Point. Everybody has those players that they love. I love Braden Point, man. He's fun to watch. He's in the play in like every game that he laces them up for. He's gritty. He's a gamer. So he's got 19 goals this year, second in the league, 15 power play points, top 6 in the league. Amazing deployment. I mean, that part is undoubted. The interesting thing about Braden Point is he's on a short list of about 4 or 5 guys who consistently shoot like 18, 19, 20% every single year. 20 power play goals, he's done it like 3 times. 30 power play points, kind of does that every year. He's got like 45 goals or more 3 of the past 5 years. Like, Braden Point is a top 6 or 8 fantasy player that gets drafted like a top 15 or 18 fantasy player every year. And I don't understand why. Like this year, he's got 4 games out of 31 or 32 where he hasn't gotten any points. He's got 8 games where he's got more than 2 points each. Some of those are 3 and 4. So you get the combination of consistency and splash with Braden Point. I mean, Christ, he's got 13 points in his last 4 games. Braden Point to me is the perfect player to target and say, you can win my league. You're going to help me every night you go out there, and I will overpay for that. Right now, again,
what's our exploit on him?
Well, I think the exploit on him is he's not Kucherov, right? The ultimate guy to own on that team. He's center only. So there's a couple, again, you're notching him down ever so slightly. But if you could get 95 to 105 points of Braden Point, 45 and 51 goals the last couple of years, if he gives you 45 goals and 55 to 60 assists, if he stays healthy all year, like, dude, that's a top 10 player. Like, you trade a top 10 player for him, especially one that might be underperforming a little bit. If somebody feels they can maximize value on Braden Point, he's like there, but he's not quite there in terms of that next echelon of player. Do you know what I'm saying? That's the type of guy that we want to target. Zach Werenski to me is the exact same thing, only on defense. And we know what the bias is there. It's injury, right? Everybody that, if you talk to anybody who owns Werenski, even if they love what he's doing, they're nervous. Right?
Yeah, you have to be.
He's got D2 upside, like literally defenseman number 2 upside, possibly number 1 upside. This is the perfect combo. You've got a baked in injury bias and you've got this crazy, what appears to be unsustainable production. But like, is it really? I mean, he scored 20 goals in the past. He had 67 points last year. His shots on goal per game are the highest in the league as a defenseman. And he's been up here before. He's shooting almost 10%. He's been higher than that before. He did it for a whole year and scored 20 goals. You know what I'm saying? Like, betting markets have this guy as 3rd right now for the Norris at plus 1,500 behind Makar and Hughes, who are kind of 50-50. Like, he's got more goals than those guys, more shots than those guys, more blocks than those guys. I'm not saying he's a better player, but I'm saying Zach Werenski is in the top 3 of defensemen. Can you buy him for less than what you could pay for Roman Josi?
Oh yeah.
Zach Werenski over Roman Josi for what he's doing right now. That might sound crazy.
Guess who's in my IR right now?
Right.
Fucking Roman Josi. Guess who's not? Zach Werenski.
Again, buying high. The guy is like top 3, but most people think he's going to do that the rest of the year. I think he's going to, right? And I would bet that he is in a redraft league. That's what you're trying to do. My third guy on here was Sam Reinhart. I thought the great bias here was just recency. And the fact that he put up 57 goals last year on almost 25% shooting. And both of those were very uncharacteristic for him, outside of the fact that his kind of deployment and ice time and all that were never better. So those had to regress, right? And I agree. But there were other things that also had to regress for him that people weren't talking about. So yeah, he scored 57 last year and the shooting percentage was a bit high. That could come down. But you know what was also really weird last year? He scored 94 points and only had 37 assists. That to me is really weird. Like, what's more likely? The goals come back a little bit per game, but the assists per game with the players that he's out there all the time with come back up. Like, that's exactly what's happening. That's rising to kind of slightly above his career average right now, assists per game. His goals per game have dipped slightly, so regression is there. Check mark there for anyone who called that. But like, the result of those two things happening is the same in higher production in pretty much every category.
Kind of washes out, yeah.
Yeah, man. For Sam Reinhart, it might be an average to an underpay that appears to be an overpay. If you're buying a 95 to 100 point player and you're going to say give up an 85 to 90 point more established player for him, that might look like an overpay, right? But his name recognition has not caught up to the tier of player that he is right now. And so he's great, but he's not, like we were saying about Point, he's not quite in that next tier where people like, I'd never trade him, or I'd need 3 of your best for him. Like, you might get somebody that would move a Reinhart. You'd have to pay a lot, but that's the type of player we're trying to isolate here. The really, really good players that people think are just great. That's what I'm saying.
There's such a no, I love this, because a lot of what happens at like the midpoint in the season is, oh, who should I, who's the second half performer, who's a buy low right now, and the risk that you carry with a second half performer, in gigantic quotes, or a buy low opportunities, that they stay low. And when you're buying high and are self-aware that you are buying high, like, that this is the portfolio of performance that these players, Braden Point, Zach Werenski, Sam Reinhart, that they have always, Reinhart for a little bit less time, but like with his new deployment and everything, this is who he is now, right? So you can trust these guys to continue to do this. So take these guys, over to Dauber, see which one fits out best for your playoffs. Because if you can buy high on somebody who is really going to help you, especially in the playoffs and things like that. I almost like Braden Point because that team is on a playoff bubble too, because they're just going to be playing their little hearts out. You know what I mean? Because they need to get,
that's right,
every night. And so you're going for these bubble guys. And Zach Werenski, like, that injury, yes, it's a risk that you take. But you could exploit the fact that he's on Columbus too. It'd be like, oh, there's no way Columbus can keep this up all year. And, there's certain things that you can kind of like play into your negotiations in your favor, but you're understanding that you are buying high, and, buying good players is always a good thing to do. And when you do one of those 2-for-1s, if somebody's into that, like Braden Point, center only, right? Like, if somebody needs winger help or has too many centers or whatever, go at them with a couple, like a wing and a defenseman, or a wing and whatever. Fill their holes, right? Like, whatever the holes in the roster is. And like, say this works out for both of us, right? So, I dig it, because if you go 2-for-1, not only are you getting somebody like a Braden Point, but you're also getting a streamer spot who doesn't have an actual name, but if you play your cards right, like, that could be a 70 to 80 to 90 point player over the course of a year. Because you're streaming guys in, you're streaming guys out. You always have somebody playing. You're going to get a lot more games out of a streamer spot than you are just a name. So I always love 2-for-1s if you can go for it. I'm into it. All right, let's get into.
We'll pivot from strategy. Right? That's right, into streaming.
There's always like that little fantasy hockey 101 kind of thing, and smack dab in the middle of these episodes. Schedule breakdown, man. Like we said, Florida, they have the best schedule. They have 4 games, 4 off nights. And then you got Washington, Colorado, 4 games, 3 off nights, Dallas, Utah, Anaheim. You can check all this stuff out in the grid, because I'm saying a lot of words, and it's not like you guys are taking notes. You're probably in the car or fucking mowing your grass or wherever you are. I don't know. It's December. Maybe you're not mowing your grass. 3 games, 3 off nights. That's Dallas, Utah, Anaheim. Said that one. 4 games, 2 off nights, Vancouver, Edmonton. And if you're into it, a deeper league, whatever you're looking at them, 3 games, 2 off nights, the Rangers, Carolina, Detroit, Toronto, Minnesota. We're not going to really talk about them in terms of streamer schedules or anything like that, but it's worth noting. Easiest schedules. Colorado's got 4 games and 3 off nights, and their opponent win percentage, the average win percentage of their opponents, is under 500. They're playing Vancouver, San Jose, Anaheim, and Seattle. So to me, Yes, I like Florida for 4 games, 4 off nights. But when I look at Colorado and their opponents, I can give up, quote unquote, give up one off night, which is Thursday, that has 9 games. It's 1 game away from being an off night to get somebody like a Middlestat versus an Evan Rodriguez. Like, your ceiling is just higher there. Or a Ross Colton. Like, if you can get a Ross Colton for this next week, I think that's so much better than anything you can do, unless like Verhage is for some reason on your wire. So yes, Florida is probably where you want to go, where your instincts tell you to go. But as soon as you look at the available players, everything kind of starts to look a little shittier, depending on what your league looks like. But I think in mine, it's like maybe Lindell's out there, maybe.
Like Rodriguez, maybe Lindell. There's not much.
Yeah, it gets kind of yucky. So take that for what it is. Edmonton also has a really nice schedule in terms of opponents. They're playing Florida, Boston, San Jose, Ottawa. So their opponent win percentage is 5-5. Not so bad. It's okay. Worse schedules. And I think we could talk about like straight up dropping some New York Islanders, because over the next 4 weeks, if you look at the 4-week grid, they have the worst schedule. 10 games over the next 4 weeks, 1 off night. So there are 2 weeks in there that they have 2 games. It's just a brutal stretch of games for the Islanders. They're not performing. I think you can probably say goodbye to, like, I don't know, like who would you keep? Anders Lee is kind of heating up right now, but I could see him being on the waiver wire. Yeah, Barzell you'll probably keep. Dobson you'll keep. Is there anybody else that hits that mark for you?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like Paul Mary. He did some stuff for you. He's got 11 goals, but I mean, my baseline for this is I look at their ownership percentage. If this is a player that you streamed, it means you picked them up randomly like a week or 2 ago. If they're under 25 or 30% ownership, just put them right back, because they're going to be there again, right? Like, so to your point, Anders Lee's crept up. He's almost 50%, 43. But again, like that, by the time, you know what these teams are, TJ? This is watch list week. Like, those are the teams when they have these junk schedules, Vegas and the Islanders. That's when you throw your, I don't know, Thomas Hurdles and Ivan Barbashevs and like all these other random players that, depending on the type of league that you're in, the streamers from Vegas, the streamers from the Islanders, you're going to forget about these players because their schedules suck for a calendar month. And so is everybody else in your league. So just when you move those players out, or you notice that those teams have some pretty junk schedules, just throw a few of those players as a reminder in your watch list, so that 5 weeks from now, when Vegas actually does become streamer relevant again, you can get out ahead of that maybe in week 3.5 or week 4 and pick one of those guys up.
I don't hate it, but I don't know. I hate the Islanders. Pitch them all. Let's get into some back-to-back goalie streams. Just talk about these briefly. Monday, Washington sees Dallas and Chicago. I think if you can get that Chicago one, that's a fucking layup. Winnipeg versus Anaheim and San Jose. What do you think about getting one of those games in?
Yeah, whatever one that's not Helly, I think you could easily justify a stream. Now, again, it depends on how many ads you have throughout the week. We just talked about how there's going to be some pretty deep options here in terms of a pretty spread out schedule. So odds are pretty good with a streaming spot. You're going to get 3 to 4 games, maybe 4 to 5 games. So is like one start from one of these backups worth it for you? Depending, it might. But yeah, that one does look pretty good. There's no teams, to my understanding, that have multiple back-to-backs, do they? Let's take a peek.
I don't think
here.
so.
I don't think there is. So again, at best, you're getting one game maybe from one of these players.
Yeah, and that starts to get expensive. Like, especially if you have just one or 4 pickups per week, and you're just getting one game out of one stream. Yes, right. Like the ceiling is certainly there. If you pick up a Comrie versus Anaheim or San Jose or whoever it may be, you probably get the win. You'll probably get some good stats out of it, but it depends on your goalie scoring. So I mean, if that
you're
means
chasing the dragon too, though, right? Maybe you're looking for that the perfect, like, I streamed this goalie, they gave me a shutout, and you can take that victory lap with your league the whole time. But yeah, it's going to come at a pretty steep cost this week.
And that's another thing I want to talk about. So Colorado has this like super kind of easy week this week. So if Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood look good, maybe it's the opponents. So I don't know if like we should crown them anything just yet. Wednesday, Thursday, Vancouver's got Utah, Vegas. That Utah game looks pretty good. Philly's got a couple back-to-backs. I don't know. Fedotov's been okay. Kolosov's been pretty good, depending on the night. But that's the thing with Philly.
Even the
Depends on the
Vancouver one, though, like I know we don't have Raj on here to give us what is usually some pretty deep info on Vancouver, because like, Demko came back and played and led in 4. They lost against St. Louis. Lankinen came in and shut out Florida. And Demko's going to go tonight against Boston at home. I'm very, very intrigued to see the outcome of that start. Obviously, Demko is the 1A there, and he's going to run. But Lankinen has been so good. They have
Really
the
good.
luxury of not having to play Demko as much as maybe we would have thought he would play, or fantasy owners would like him to play. But like, this feels like a 50-50 right now, with any weakness in Demko's game just rest, man. Like, we got it.
Easy.
$800,000, second or third best goalie in the league. Like, we got it, man. Rest up, right? And every rest up start is just a chip off of that ceiling for Demko. And so I'm in no rush to get rid of Lankin. And I'll tell you, I know that there's probably some pretty trigger finger happy GMs that were maybe looking to move him quick or whatever. Dude's been awesome. And I'm a Vancouver fan. I want to see Demko run I want to see the old Thatcher Demko, but I'm also a realist. And so I'm going to hold on to Lankinen probably longer than I should, just because of the potential for what I could see with Demko. And he's just been so good all year long. So,
well, I think you're spot on. I think this is a 50-50 net right now. And like, best case scenario, if you're a Lankinen owner, you're getting 50% of this. Well, I guess best case in a selfish manner would be like, Demko gets rehurt and, you're back to 65-ish, 70% of the starts from Lankinen. But I think at worst, you're getting 50%. So it's still a decent ceiling. I'm right there with you. I think maybe another season of, because Demko does need to get his feet wet for an extended period of time. So next season, he'll probably be back at that, surefire volume. But man, Woodley called Lankinen this preseason. Dude, what a genius. Like, that's the guy we should get.
I'll tell you, and you listen to the people who are experts and who we bring on when you have the humility to say, like, this person is way smarter about this than I could ever hope to be. That's why we have them on. I own Lankinen in the 2 most important leagues I play in, and that dude has been a rock star all year long. And there's no way I would have drafted him with the confidence that I did if I hadn't listened to that episode. So, I mean, it's a testament. I mean, I look at just the back-to-backs that jump out to me here. Like, you got a Detroit Friday, Saturday back-to-back against Montreal.
Yeah,
like they play each other twice.
Anyway,
that could go anywhere.
Any
like
direction.
There's multiple Detroit goalies on the IR right now. Montreal's been a tire fire. Like, that could be 8-5. That could be 1-0. 1. Yeah, like, that's gonna just be variance galore.
Yeah, and then we'll save the rest for the guys on the weekend preview. Give them something that they don't need to repeat. So let's get into the waiver wire bit. Florida,
some drop candidates.
Yeah, we could talk some drop candidates, and that's kind of where I lead off with the New York Islanders. They have 10 games, 1 off night over the next 4 weeks, and that's brutal. Calgary right behind him, them 11 games, 1 off night. Then you got Columbus, San Jose. You can check out the 4-week grid on FHFhockey.com. But the teams that are really looking good: Washington, Florida, Anaheim, and Carolina. All have like a shit ton of off nights, a shit ton of games, looking really good for the foreseeable future. But I think just seeing the data that the New York Islanders and the Calgary Flames have the worst schedules over the next month should give you the push over the edge to get rid of those guys that are fringe players. Like, if you're looking at the bottom of your roster and you're looking at like a Sharon Govich or like, God forbid, a Huberdeau, like, I think I would keep Weegar and Rasmus Anderson, maybe a Kadri if you desperately need it. But like, after that, is there anybody worth holding on to?
From an ownership standpoint,
obviously,
yeah, Wolf for sure. But I think anybody else there is completely expendable. More importantly, like, what would they be doing for you? Right. Yeah. So it might feel good to hold on to them. The easiest thing is to not drop the player, right? It's hard to be like, I got to cut you because I think somebody else is going to be better. But they're not going to play for you. They just will not. Yeah. 2 to 3 weeks is way too long to have a dead roster spot. So,
and that's especially the thing. They only one off night over the next 4 weeks for both New York Islanders and Calgary. So that means every single day that they're playing is likely a full roster. And how many of those games does somebody from the Islanders or Calgary actually make onto your roster? They're probably some of the first players that you're swapping out, that you're putting on the bench. So turn them into streamer spots and get somebody productive in there. Get some off
now,
nights.
TJ. Last week, we talked about players like this, and then we just spent a whole bunch of time talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins, who had a dog shit schedule against hard teams, and they led the league in scoring. So, like, what the fuck? What are we supposed to do? You got to play the probabilities, right? The answer is play the probabilities. There's going to be weird shit that happens all the time. You can't explain away Pittsburgh putting up 9 after not having a pulse for 2 months, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to drop Kadri for fucking Matt Grzelcyk right now?
Right, exactly. That's right. So, I mean, what we're saying is there's a reason why you have to make these calculated decisions. Drop the Islanders, drop the Calgary Flames. At least if it goes sideways, you did it for the right reason. Right?
Yep.
If the Pittsburgh player sucks and you drop him 3 weeks in, that was dumb. You knew they had a terrible schedule. You held them anyways, and you lost 2 weeks of production. At least if you dropped them early and they popped off and you had somebody else, I got a bit of this person and the schedule was terrible. You can explain that away. So some of those, they're not giving you much ammunition to explain holding them.
Oh, God. Sometimes I wonder why we do this to ourselves in terms of just playing fantasy. Let's talk about the Florida Panthers, man. Like we said, there's not a ton in terms of like availability. I'm looking at right now. I just loaded up the Content Creators League with like guys from Apples, Geno's, Fantasy Puck, Dauber Hockey, Victor Nuno from Fantasy Hockey Life, Anton Lundell, top of the queue here. 31% rostered. He's doing okay. A lot of his stats are padded from when Barkov was out. So his averages look a bit weird. He's line 3, power play 2 right now. Rodriguez, line 2, power play 2. I think the guy that I'm excited about is just go check if Aaron Ekblad is out there. He's top power play and he's 62% rostered. So I think that would be like maybe the fulcrum point that I would actually pick up a Florida Panther this week, just because I don't see a ton of value anywhere else. Like Eetu Luostarinen, are we doing that? Are we doing AJ Greer, like Jesper Boquist? Come on, there's not a ton of value here. So I don't know. Terrible team to have a perfect schedule.
It kind of is. That's very similar to what we were talking about with Dallas a number of weeks back, where it's like they're a very good team in hockey and it's cool. They have a great schedule, but like 8 of their players are over 60% owned. So who the hell do I stream? And Florida's basically the same position. Like just skaters alone, there's 7 of them that are over 60% owned, 2 defensemen and 5 forwards. So who are you picking up? When you get down to players, the only player to me that would be of interest if you can't get a Lundell would be Rodriguez, because he just every now and then he finds a score sheet. I think he's got 8 goals in about 30 games. But you start getting below that, like you're talking about guys that score 2 or 3 times in 30 games. Like you want to take a 1 in 10 dice roll on a third line player that doesn't get power play time. Like that's pointless in a week like this where there's a lot of other players. You can still get zeros on off nights. That's right. They count the same. So I don't know, like there is some options there. Again, there's really deep leagues where it does make sense to target down the roster in Florida. So there are a couple players there, Lundell being primary, I would say Rodriguez being secondary, and there's a couple of D that are always available there too. You could stream those players, but if there's other options available that are better on other teams, then I would go there first.
I think the one thing that Florida does has is if you're in a banger league like Nico Mikkola, doing a little bit of hitting and blocking, about 1 of each per game. Dmitry Kulikov is hitting a little more than he's blocking. AJ Greer is banging up a storm. Luostarinen, super duper off chance that he scores some offense, but he is banging. So the riffs are there if you're looking in Florida, and you can definitely just like that's a week-long stream. So if you just want to hit some blocks, plug and play. Hopefully you have 2 streamer spots and you can get offense on your second streamer spot. So, and if you're lucky too, like the last time I checked, I think Greer gets about 8.5 minutes a night. So if you get all 4 of those games, you're got 34 minutes of just primo production there. That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the options that you got in Florida. So I don't want anybody to be like really blinded by the off night thing, because Colorado, who we're going to talk about right now, I do think has better options. I mean, Nishushkin, Lehkonen, both are under 60% rostered. So just go check, see if they're available first thing. I would take either one of those guys over anybody from Florida, and I would probably hold them for a pretty long time. And then Ross Colton is 42% rostered. I think the options in Colorado right now are just far and away better than what they are in Florida. And you're missing an off night by one game. So Colorado is essentially 4 games, 4 off nights.
Yeah,
it's just
and given
so
what
close.
You mentioned earlier in the episode around the changes in power play deployment, like let's just kind of lay one of these cards on the table here. Ross Colton is probably owned in your league because he did great things, then he got hurt, then he was great again, then he got hurt. So like 42 is a bit misleading. He's probably owned in those 42% of leagues are probably like a lot of who our listeners are in. So if that's the case, Casey Middlestat at 19% is a priority add. So if he is not, he's power play 1, and on Colorado and getting that deployment, and you can pick him up, you absolutely have to do that. I don't see anybody on this list aside from somebody that's, maybe looking for a banger league and you get lucky with a couple of the players we're going to talk about in a bit. Aside from that, give me Casey Middlestat on every player here.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're getting all sorts of off nights. So the fact that he's center only shouldn't bother you too much, but he's in a cold streak, but when he was on power play 1 is when he was really excelling, and they're putting him back in that position. So I think all of that kind of starts to flow back into him. And I think we get some serious value out of him. Colton is just a monster at what he does. 9 goals, 1 assist on the season. Like he's just scoring goals, man. 5 of those are on the power play. So he's crushing.
And let me make no mistake, I would want Colton over Middlestat. I just don't believe you're going to get Colton. So if that's the case, then go Middlestat.
Yeah. And then you got to look, I mean, there's plenty of, in terms of like periphery, you got Sam Girard is out there banging around, but Ross Colton bangs too, man. So he is one worth thinking about. Washington is the next team worth talking about. They've got, what do they got? Same as Colorado, 4 games, 3 off nights, except their off night that's like missing from Florida is on Tuesday, which has 10 games. So again, this week is not like a super crazy week. And there are some options in Washington that are worth talking about. Alexei Protas, 18%, Matt Roy, PLD, Marty Fevs if you're looking for bangs, Lars Eller even if you're in a super deep league. Is there anybody in Washington that like really strikes your fancy, even if it's one of these guys I already mentioned?
I think ironically it's how you mentioned them. Protas with the candidate that if Marty Fevs is available and you're in a banger heavy league, whether that's points and it's skewed towards bangs or whether it's categories,
he does the damn thing.
Fevs is awesome. Yeah. PLD has the potential to be awesome. He really doesn't have that to this point. So like I would say he would be third on that list. If Protas is available, I would stream Protas with confidence for the week. Again, you got to have a semblance of what success looks like. Right at the end of 3 games from this player, or ideally 4, what would be a great stream in terms of points or periffs. He might not score 5 goals for you or something, but he's going to contribute and he's going to be on the ice a lot. And he's kind of been riding a hot streak since the season started. So vibes are all around high in Washington. I mean, if there's nothing else, like you want to look at intangibles that would make me, want to ride with a team over another. Vibes are really high in Washington and they've been doing it. So any of those 3 guys we talked about, I'd be happy streaming into this week.
Plenty of riffs to be had in Washington. Now we're going to go to a team that's even more bleak than Florida was. And that's Edmonton, who like what is out there? Jeff Skinner. Even Arvidsson's on IR. Those are usually like our go-to guys for Edmonton.
Colson, really, right?
Colson, yeah. I mean, what really are you going to do? He's line 2. There's no power play time to be had there. Not that like power play 2 is really all that good, and all the power play 1 guys are like 75% or 100%. There's barely an in between.
Skinner maybe like you're looking at probably Skinner and Podkolzin, and then probably Henrique after that. I mean, I guess if it's gross enough, like Corey Perry and maybe a Brett Kulak or something. But Again, there's probably better elsewhere. Do you want Corey Perry or do you want Alexei Protas? I probably want Protas.
Yeah.
Right.
Easy. So here's one for you. Do you usually go? I know how I would answer this question, but week-long stream, are you looking at floor or are you looking at ceiling in terms of your streamer?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Because I feel like
I want to fence it so hard on this because it totally depends on where I'm at. I'm being very candid with this
but I feel like Jeff Skinner is a perfect example because I think the ceiling is there. Like you could gamble, oh yeah, he's so good in individual expected goals per 60, but he's just been getting unlucky. Like, are you taking that gamble this week, or do you go somebody safe?
I typically don't stream for consistency. Because those players usually aren't there in the first place, or if they are, they're showing you like a little bit of it at the beginnings of it, or they did it and they tailed off massively. So typically I'm streaming for splash. I've been pretty adamant on these shows that is something that I look for, especially in a Cats league. Like I want to search that out. And if you do have the fortune of being in, say, the top third to top quartile of your league, then you doubly get to stream for splash because you've probably got a lot of that consistency built into your league already. So like some of the names that we're going to talk about in some of these tier 3 streams would probably be more preferable to me than trying to pick. I mean, certainly the garbage players on Florida, or Edmonton. Like I would absolutely be looking at some of these streamers on a Utah, a Vancouver, an Anaheim, that just give me way more potential splash than what I'm going to get. It's like an elegant way of fence sitting, if that makes sense.
I mean, I would probably take the same process, but I think I tend to lean more towards floor, especially if it's a week-long ad. Like I will for my day streams, like if I'm just doing a spot start or, if I'm cashing in on a Friday, Sunday or something, I'll probably lean closer to ceiling. But I think if I'm just doing a set and forget one guy for the whole week and then I stream around him, he'll be my floor guy. And then my ceiling guy would be the spot starts. And that's when I would look at like one game streams, maybe a goalie who obviously you're rooting for the ceiling just for that game. But a little bit of extra strategy in the potatoes of the episode.
I love it.
So Edmonton, there's fuck all out there. So that's what that is. They do have a back-to-back to end the week, and strangely enough, they've been leading on Picard more than I thought they would. Let's get into these tier 3 streams. That's where I've got Vancouver, Dallas, Utah, and Anaheim. And I did say we had like 15 players from Anaheim to talk about, but that's just like not 15 good players. There's just 15 players out there. So Vancouver to start it off, Sherwood, Joshua, Suter, and Garland. I think Garland over 50%. He's just kind of out there. He'd be my floor guy because I think he's the one that's maybe not consistent, but consistently splashing. You know what I mean? Like he might throw a 0 at you, but the next game he'll probably throw 3 points at you. So I like him for like pretty much a fence sitting kind of guy. And Sherwood is consistent when it comes to the bangs. But is there anybody in Vancouver you like better than the other?
I mean, I love those first two guys, but at 52 and 38%, I think in the sharpest of leagues, they're not going to be there. So, I mean, Suter has always done very nice things for me when I've streamed him in very short periods. So if you can grab him for a couple games, and it's more your even strength deployment there for sure. But I don't want to get sucked into the Dakota Joshua vortex a la Raj. But I will say, like with a bangs lean to your league, you can justify playing a Joshua because you know what you're going to get, at least on the riff side, and anything offensively is like a plus. But if you're not really compensated so heavily for that, then I would definitely look at a couple of those other players over Joshua.
I got a question for you. Are you looking at Vancouver players' stats right now? If you're not, don't.
Can be.
No, don't. I have a question. So 28 games into the season, how many hits do you think Kiefer Sherwood has?
I'm going to say 28 games called 30. He's at least 5. It's got to be over 150.
Oh, man, you are close. It's 147.
No, shit.
No, I got that off. He's 176.
Oh, okay, so, okay. So actually light. Okay. But he's like 40 or 50 ahead of like the next person, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he's got such a lead.
I was like, there's no shot that he has that much, but he fucking does. He really does.
Nashville would have never needed him.
God.
I mean,
so let's see. I want to see how many players have more than 176 hits last year, the entirety of last year. Okay, so last year, if he would have stopped hitting today,
right now,
he would have ranked 56th in hits last year.
And he's played a third of the games. He's played a third of the games.
Dude, he is.
He's going to get 500 hits if he plays in a season.
Will. Yeah. It's insane. There's got to be a sustainability stat for hits, like hitting percentage or something. Like we get expected hits per 60.
And the fact that he's a forward too.
That.
I mean,
he's crushing
and produces like, and it's not just a black hole for production and you're streaming for the 11 hits he's going to give you in one game. Like
he's been so damn good.
Fun to own. Same as Garland. He's been fun to own. That's the thing. Like this is a hobby for all of us, right? Some of us take it a lot more serious than others, but at the end of the day, you're supposed to have fun. That's why we say
have fun.
Yeah, draft a player that you like that's on your team if you want to own them. Like make this shit fun. And watching players like Kiefer Sherwood and Connor Garland rip around out there. Garland, you can fit him in his pocket and he just rips around out there on the ice. It's fun to watch. So have fun while you're doing this. If you're gritting your teeth up at 3 a.m., you're doing this wrong. Like, have some fun.
Oh, man. Let's talk about Dallas, which would probably have you gritting your teeth at 3 a.m., especially if you're a Jason Robertson owner. But the streamers, they haven't changed much, man. We're still talking about Ben. We're still talking about Stankoven, Esa Lindell, Evgeny Dadonov. But there is a new face to the team, and it's Liam Bichelle, who got his first game versus Nashville, scored a goal on 2 shots, had 5 hits, looked pretty good. He is a defenseman. He got 15 minutes. So I don't know if like the longevity's there. He is expected to play his second game tonight against St. Louis. He's got a minute and 25 already, and they're still in the first period. So let's see how he does. I don't know if he's not an ad, but he scored a goal in his first game. So good on him. I wanted to at least talk about
and like Dallas is a team that's been either streamer worthy. It seems like half the weeks of the year so far that we've been talking about a favorable Dallas schedule, and they have a pretty good schedule down the stretch and into the playoffs. So my approach to Dallas was, I know I'm going to want a Dallas player more weeks than not, but I didn't really want to draft one. So I traded for one. And that way I'm, instead of streaming in and out lesser quality Dallas players, I know I'm kind of always covered on that angle, but I didn't have to invest a huge amount of draft capital up front to get that coverage. So
who'd you wind up with?
Joe, actually, but I traded.
He's turning it around.
I traded. Good. I was going to say, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago.
Yep.
2 weeks ago. Yeah. So he's been good. He's been great. He's been good, but I wanted Dallas exposure. I wanted line one. I wanted power play one. But I mean, shit, he was being drafted in the 3rd round, 4th round. Like I was not paying that for a Johnson, for a Hintz, for Robo. So as that kind of slid back a little bit, I'm like, I'm going to try to snipe a piece of this really good team who I think has very solid chance of winning the Stanley Cup. If I could be so bold. I want a piece of that team, but I don't want to pay the price for it up front. So sometimes you got to get creative.
I mean, that revenge tour feels like it's just starting to, but
yeah,
I don't want you thinking like 100 points is like pace is the revenge tour. No, he's kind of a 70-point player so far. So we'll wait for the breakout. But Utah, the next team worth talking about. I think there's a few players here that are kind of exciting. Not even a few. Like Logan Cooley is exciting to me right now. Like Nick Schmaltz, he's so hit or miss, but I think Cooley's been one of the, over the last like 30 days, man, he's been lighting it up. And I think he's somebody worth talking about. He's 123rd ranked right now over the last 30 days, scoring a bunch, over half an assist a game, almost like 0.4 goals per game. Looking really good. Line 2 power play 1. So Cooley is somebody worth looking at. I think, here's a question. So let's rank a couple guys. I think Colton, let's just take him out of it because the percentage is a little bit high, but let's talk about like Middlestat, Protas, and Logan Cooley. How would you rank those 3 guys? If we're talking like points with a slight banger lean.
Points with a slight banger lean. If
almost like our listener leagues.
Yeah, that's right. We've got Middlestat, we've got Protas, and we've got Logan Cooley. I mean, I love the deployment with with Middlestat, it's going to be really hard to go against that. So I'm gonna take the layup in Middlestat, but with what? Sorry, you said banger leans on that.
Yeah,
I actually might not then, because I'm gonna tell you, Middlestat's gonna go 4 games. He's gonna get you 3 total shots, no hits, no blocks. So it's gonna be 3 power play points, all assists, or he's gonna be very disappointing. So if you can't handle that in the week, I would look to Cooley 1, Protus 2 on that front. If you need that additional, banger upside, because I mean, Middlestat is going to do one thing for you. Like, he's like the Adam Fox of center.
Yeah.
Right. Like he could play with 2 Fabergé eggs in his pocket and he'll be just fucking fine. Like, we don't need to worry about him doing anything other than pass into somebody who's going to do something awesome. So if he does that a few times in the week, great.
If you were, so Utah doesn't have Monday or Tuesday. They're not playing Monday or Tuesday, but then the rest of the week they're straight off nights. So if you can get like Washington, if you can do Protus the day 1, day 2, and then switch to a Cooley, you get 5 games out of 1 acquisition. Looking pretty good.
That's a good stream.
That's with the caveat that you add Protus on Sunday and ride him into the next week. So not so bad out of Utah. Then I got like Kesselring, McBain, Mata for super deep leagues out there. But those are your bangers.
I wish we had a McBain drop. That'd be so perfect for right now. But yeah, I got time for McBain. We just talked about banger leagues. If you're in a banger league, that guy's got, and you know what? If I'm not mistaken, last year he only had single eligibility. This year he's got dual. So it's easy. Right? Yeah, it's easier to get him in. He throws the body around, and he's actually got, 7 goals on the year, I think? 9 goals on the year, 87 hits.
Yeah.
Like, for real, get him in your lineup if bangs matter. McBain's doing it.
3 hits a game on the dot. So he's banging around. Easily leads the team in hits per game. So, or no, Liam O'Brien, but he only played 3 games. So I don't really count that. And then Lawson Krause is usually our like tried and true banger, but McBain's got almost double the amount of hits. So definitely go for McBain. Anaheim, this is where we're going to get into the weeds a little bit. They've got Trouba at 41%, Gudis at 27, Terry at 24, Zellweger at 13, Gauthier at 8, Mintukov at 5, Strome 3, Lacombe at 1, Killorn at 3. There are 2 players on this list, maybe 3, if I bite my tongue hard enough, that are worth talking about to me. And that's Terry, Zellweger, and yes, Cutter Gauthier. And I'm only saying that as a salty Flyers fan. I think Terry's
that's big of you, actually, from where we were a few weeks back. Yeah, it's progress.
I'm watching Mishkov do fucking Michigan goals and stuff, so I'm all right.
Signing autographs as he's getting booted out of games.
Yeah, he's a badass. I'm a big fan. So
yeah,
I've got enough to be happy about. And all right, like if you're looking for bangs, Trouba, Gudis are the easy kind of layups here, but I think Terry is the one worth adding. I'm surprised he's not higher owned, to be honest with you. He's been nothing short of stellar all year, in fact.
Yeah, 24%. I mean, 3/4 of leagues he's there. So with the D move that we talked about earlier with Fowler moving on to St. Louis, I mean, we can finally see maybe a little bit of a log jam clear up there a bit. He's ironically, we've been talking about that in the net here as well, with them at some point maybe moving on from Gibson. Yeah. But Fowler was always in that conversation too around the log jam at D and getting him out. So maybe the first piece of the puzzle is kind of gone in right there. I mean, we talk about Anaheim so much because their players are always there. So for me, whenever you've got a team like this where outside of what appears to be 2 players, you can probably draft anyone on the team right now. What I would look at is, what are the maybe 1 or 2 things you're coveting the most, and then just try to hone that down to this team. So for instance, like if you're looking for power play points, like Mason McTavish has got 5 of them. Troy Terry's got 7 of them. Like, you can kind of hone down. If you're looking for shots on goal, well, that's going to be a slightly different list of players on this team. But that's what I mean. So you don't have to be, I don't need, back to our point around what am I looking for a stream. Usually it's like I need splash in 1 or 2 areas. So I don't need you to be like even Steven great or average across the board. I'd love you to be like great in 1 or 2 cats, and then I can kind of drop you when we're done with that. So I would get really granular to use. I know we didn't hit our Q1. I got all these like boardroomisms saved up, TJ. We'll get this out for maybe a midpoint year
I
review.
Pressed my suit and everything, man.
That's right. We but we just there's a lot of different players here that we can get really micro on. We can get really granular on this if we need to just target what you're looking for.
All right, man. That brings us to the point in the episode where we're picking one guy. And I think we should just take Ross Colton off the list, so neither of us can pick the guy. I'll let you go first. It's been a while. We took last week off.
We did. It has been a while, and there's no shortage of options here too. I think, off the surface, we said we're probably going to steer clear of Florida, just given the depth there. Even if Middlestat does it, I'm going to be bored to hell watching it. So I'm gonna pass on Middlestat. Ooh. and the line, the Power Play 1 production there. I am going to make my way down to Vancouver. If Sherwood's off the board, we said 38%, he's going to be owned. You know what? I'm going to have some fun with this. We were talking about Cooley and we were talking about Utah. I'm going to grab a Utah player. Yeah, I think, I want to go McBain so bad for the memes, but I'm going to go with Cooley because of the many reasons that we gave before. But if for some reason he's not there, again, Nick Schmaltz might be a better hockey player, but he's just boring as shit to watch. So I actually would probably sneaky stream a McBain just for the bangs and for some offensive upside.
All right. I was picking a second guy.
Anaheim's got the
same schedule. That's who I would have picked.
Yes.
So I think I'll go Troy Terry because they play 3 games through off nights, so at least we're on level ground in terms of like schedule. I've got Winnipeg, Colorado, and Utah this week. You've got, I mean, it's not much easier. You've got, Vancouver, Mini, and then Anaheim. So we'll see how it goes. That's going to be Logan Cooley versus
Troy Terry.
That's right. I was looking at Sherwood's name in the loads. So that's good. We got one question here we should get to just for shits and giggles. So Frank's wondering, I guess he's making some sort of trade. Nietzsche and Besser versus JT Miller and Ekholm. I think, first of all, I'm just going to be using 5-hole leagues as reference because I don't know your scoring, but
that's right. That was going to be my question.
A big thing here is just going to be like, do you need a defenseman? And if you do, then yes, JT Miller and Ekholm is probably the side you want to go for. If it's banger league, JT Miller's a fucking god in those leagues. But Nietzsche and Besser, like you're giving up a lot of goals. You're giving up, a substantial amount of shots between the two of them. And so
it almost seems like the league settings for where you would make the trade to receive Miller and Ekholm wouldn't really be aligned with the person giving away Nietzsche and Besser. Do you know what I'm saying? So somebody here is coming out on the wrong side of this for sure. Okay, Frank needs a D. Yeah. I will say season long, I think you're getting the best player in Miller. Nietzsche has played obviously better to this point, but if you looked at from this particular point through the rest of the season and you said you can give me Martin Nietzsche or you can give me JT Miller, I am going to take JT Miller. And so if you need Ekholm and he's coming basically at the expense of Besser, I mean, I'm trying to value these guys in my head in real time. Like it's not 1-1 for 1-1. It's like 1.5 for like 1.25 3/4 of a player. Do you know what I'm saying? In terms of Nietzsche and Miller, Miller is by far the best player here. But yeah,
and he says he needs it. So I think Ekholm, I mean, you could do so much worse on D than Ekholm. He's been
awesome.
Good. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, Miller, let's hope that whatever his hiatus, like he was trying to heal on his hiatus, that it's healed. And he comes back as like the player that we know him to be. And if he can get there, then it's a Miller and Ekholm side all day. And I'm right there with you. Nietzsche and Besser, I mean, Besser is going to be, he's going to be Besser. He'll get 65 points. And Nietzsche, who knows if he'll cool down at all if he does. So I don't know. Beautiful. I'm right there with you. Yep. Give me the Miller side. Right there with you. And Dig, if you Dig's looking for like a team breakdown. Dig, we're about to put a pin in this episode. Come back for like Tuesday trends or something, and I'll take your questions on Monday night if you want to come back, or hit us up on Twitter or join the Discord.
Hop on the Discord, man.
He doesn't use Discord. You will enjoy it if you download the app, because it's the biggest fantasy hockey Discord out there, and there's 3,000 members that are fucking radical. So come hang out, be one of the degenerates, man. That's gonna bring in the outro. That's why I haven't been doing trends, is because I don't have this tool ready to go. I'm still working on it. It's going to be rad. You guys are going to dig it. I'm calling it the WeGo charts. WeGo, WIGO. What is going on?
Love it.
It's going to be really cool. It's going to be really fun. You guys are going to dig it. So hopefully I can get that done. But until next time, guys, that is it for us. You can catch us on Twitter at FHF Hockey. You can catch us in the Fantasy Hockey Discord. And yeah, we love you. Good night.
Good night.